Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Senate Developmental Authority Study Committee this morning. I'm Senator Rhett, otherwise known as Doc, and we're going to get this meeting started. First off, we're going to start with a prayer, and then we're going to turn it over to Mr. Chairman, who's on Zoom. And Mr. Chairman, I assume you're fully dressed, so if you want to stand up, feel free.
Absolutely.
Oh, Lord.
No socks. No socks.
Oh, Lord, we thank you for this day, another opportunity to do the people's work. We ask for your wisdom and guidance as we move forward. And we ask you to bless this meeting. And we ask this through Christ the Lord. Amen. And Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Senator Rhett. Good morning. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to participate in this meeting. I want to thank those of you who are physically present at the Capitol in 450 this morning. I regret that I can't be with you today. Had a little issue earlier in the week and tested positive for COVID. So I'm currently in quarantine, and I hope I'm feeling well, mild symptoms. I'm grateful for that. I've been blessed, but I expect to be back on a full schedule early next week. But we needed to go ahead and complete this meeting this morning. I want to thank Senators Gooch and Mullis for being there. I don't know if there are other senators in the room or on Zoom.
Senator Dixon is
Senator
here.
Dixon. I see Senator Dixon. I mistook you for Senator Gooch. That's a great compliment, Senator. I apologize. Is Senator Gooch in the room?
No, Gooch is not here.
Is he available on Zoom?
Doesn't appear to be as of yet, sir.
All right, and then is Senator Parent available on Zoom?
Not as of yet, but she's supposed to be here.
Okay, so we have, the good news is we have a quorum, and I appreciate those who are physically present, and I appreciate those who will be joining us for our Zoom as we continue through the morning. This is an important opportunity for the Senate to understand more fully the operational characteristics of our development authorities and the impact that they have on our state. Certainly, we are strongly supportive of our economic development efforts, both at a state level and at a local level. And the objectives of our committee, and we'll discuss those as a committee in a bit. We will explore how the Senate and the legislature can effectively support and enhance the work of our development authorities. So I wanted to first begin with a presentation by the Department of Community Affairs. They have, I feel, the most current and accurate information about the status of development authorities in our state. And I want to recognize DCA now. Kyle Hood. Mr. Hood, are you available? Good morning.
He's here and he's coming up to the mic. What number mic you have there, sir? Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Hood, for joining us this morning. And do you have a colleague with you as well?
Yes, sir. Jackson Lilly, our research and data analyst, is with me here today.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Lilly, for joining us. Mr. Hood, I'll turn it over to you and give you the floor to provide the committee and the public with a bit of an overview of the current status of development authorities in our state.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. If I'll let Sophie, you want to go ahead and kick it the PowerPoint. We're going to make a quick presentation, and the slides that we'll show have been printed out for you. Additionally, there are some supplemental relevant documents printouts of forms and documents that reside within our reporting database that should help you in your discussion going forward. It's our understanding that part of what we want to try to do today is to help you develop a profile of not individual development authorities necessarily, but kind of the general, the status of development authorities across the state. Got Jackson with me here today, and let's see if we can get it. Sophie, will you space bar me for, please? While we work on the PowerPoint, actually, there we go. No, you're good. If you'll go one more. So a couple of quick high level kind of review and overview of what we'll talk about, and then we'll be here for the duration of not just this meeting, but any future meetings that this study committee has, and Senator Burns and Ben and Ashley have our contact information. So if there's additional information that we can't answer today, or other documents that we can provide, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to us. So we'll look at not just the development authorities themselves, but kind of the law that throughout time, the last nearly 100 years, the different types of authorities that the state has, and we'll go through several reporting documents and the information that is contained within that. We'll also share with you a couple of tables that aggregate the number of and the types of the various development authorities across the state. And then, as I mentioned, some specific information about the list of those development authorities that are contained within those tables, just to give you a better idea of who they are and kind of where they are. This is a pie chart. There are approximately 1,300 authorities, local government authorities across the state. And the two largest pie slices are development generally, and that's going to include anything that has the word development in it that isn't a downtown development. That is its own unique category. And so within the development authority pie slice, that's also going to have your joint development authorities, industrial development authorities, payroll development authorities. That's all been consolidated there. And also one note that you won't see is the regional industrial development authority. Those were just recently created in law. We're going through the process of putting out an RFP for facilitation of the training that is necessary for those future board members. So there aren't any of those in any data anywhere yet. So those, eventually there will be an extra pie slice to go along with downtown development, and then the industrial and the joint development authorities. There are about 1,300 authorities statewide. 575 of them are one of the types of development authorities. So it's my understanding that really the difference that will have it stand apart from joint development authorities is that they can bring in an additional community that is at a lower tax tier status for state incentives and grant and loan programs. That's the major difference. Otherwise, they will operate essentially the exact same.
Whose bill was that? I don't remember it at all. Was it yours? Oh, it was a House bill? Okay.
If I misrepresent, I'll yield to Senator. Okay. And so if Going forward, I'll yield to Jackson to talk a little bit more about the statutes and the reporting documents, and then we'll be here again for questions if you should have it. That's all. I was scared to push the button just in case, but if you can pull it back up. Okay.
I can go ahead and speak about it while the slides get started. So our role with all authorities, particularly downtown development, are on the reporting side. So all local authorities are required to register with the. I'm sure I'll start with that.
Yes. If you go one more. There we
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Here, I'll actually start with the ways that authorities are created. There are three primary ways. The first being through constitutional amendment. That is no longer a method of creation for development authorities, but there are many that are still functioning with that. And that sets up a single unique purpose and abilities through the amendment of the Constitution. There are also local law created through local act of the General Assembly. Again, those create a single unique type of authority. And while I don't believe development authorities can continue to be created that way, there are several who have that legislation. Finally, the General Enabling Act, we refer to those as statutory authorities. Those are created under development authorities law, and it makes up the grand majority of DDAs and DAs. There are 12 types of local authorities that can be created under this general enabling law. The ones that are pertinent today would be development authority, downtown development authority, joint development authority, as Kyle mentioned, the new one, regional industrial development authority, though none have been created so far.
Out of the three ways, you said which one is most used?
By far, General Enabling Act, and I'll give you that breakdown shortly. So DCA's primary role with all local authorities and DAs and DDAs is through registration and financial reporting. We register, all authorities are required to register with us annually, and then we publish a list of those registered authorities by fiscal year. This is stemming from the Local Authorities Registration Act passed in 1995, seen in 368016. It generally asks all authorities to give us their name, type, citation and method of creation, any information on their board members, such as training, term lengths, staff, website, things of that nature. The other part of that annual registration is the financial component. That is seen 3681.8, and it is a uniform chart of accounts based system, similar to how local governments would report their finances. So that includes assets, liabilities, revenues, expenses, bond issuances, and then there's a little more granularity with each of those subjects. We track compliance of these reports. We define compliance as having 3 most recently completed fiscal year's reports filed. And authorities are not able to apply for funding through DCA until they're compliant. And similarly, they can't issue debt until they're compliant. And that's verified with DCA through the bond attorney, usually working on that deal. Beyond what's on this slide, there's an additional reporting requirement in the debt issuance report. So any local government or local authority who is issuing debt in excess of 1 million would file a separate report with us. And then we publish a report on statewide authority indebtedness as well.
We did include in the printed materials a hard copy of the annual authority registration document. And so that this is what you would obviously on the computer, it looks a little different, but the printouts look like this, so that you can go in and actually, this is what you as a development authority director, executive director or chair would be submitting annually. And then the list of existing development authorities with their creation date and citation as reported to us is also within your packet. So if you had questions about who they were and where they are and how they were created, that's also been provided for you.
And those authorities who have completed that annual report represent the most active ones who are conducting business because that compliance is checked before moving forward. Now I'll go on to talk about the tables if I can. This is the breakdown of authorities by method of creation. And as Kyle just mentioned, I have a note on the table that as I reviewed these, I do suspect even more than listed would be created through general statute. We ask both for method of creation and citation. And if you look at the citation list, I was able to make some corrections, but just an asterisk there. You can see the number of each different types by general statute, constitutional amendment, and local law for the grand total of 575 of these types. Moving on to table 2. This breaks down authorities by year of creation. I know there's some questions about how often these authorities are created. On average, it's 5 or 6 a year being created. We have creation date going back to 1951. And again, there may be an uptick in these new authorities being created once the regional industrial development authorities begin to be created. Now looking at table 3, this is just an example of the information that will be included in the annual authority registration in terms of board members and staff. I have listed, the percent of authorities who employ a full-time director. The balance would usually have these reports filed by city or county employees. It also shows the percentage of board members who have completed the required training required under the Statutory Development Authority law. Those classes are primarily through CVIOG, GMA, ACCG, or Site Brother Shaw. Moving on to the final table, number 4. This is an example of the finances that are submitted by local authorities. Looking at averages, it doesn't tell you a whole lot, but just gives you a general idea of the type of authority finances that are filed. Non-current assets would represent your land, buildings, machinery, things like that, operating revenues, and as well as the number of bond issuances and capital leases. Thank you.
And specifically on the debt issuance, the 2021 debt issuance report has been supplied for you. And we did not segregate out just development authorities. This is a full list of all debt above $1 million that was issued by any authority in the year 2021. And that will give you a little bit better context of how a development authority debt issuance may compare to that of, say, a hospital authority or a water and sewer authority, just for apples, to try to be more apples to apples. And this in particular is available with easy access. It's already in this format on our website, and we have, I think, the last 5 years active. We only supplied last year, but if you wanted additional years to go back for research purposes, we can provide that as well. So that's all of the slides, but we're here for the duration. So any questions, any additional information we can provide for the discussion, we'd be glad to. So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Redd will yield to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. I appreciate your information and your input and sharing the details. Questions from the committee? Senator Redd, if you will orchestrate that, I'd appreciate it. Please ensure the mic is on, Senator Redd.
Yes, sir, it's on, and we're going to have Senator Gooch speak. He has a question, but I just want to let you know that all senators are present and accounted for. Also, we have Representative Oliver there waving at us.
Welcome, Chairman Oliver.
By Zoom.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman Burns, it's good to see you up there. You're looking good today.
I'm fine. I just can't travel today. I'm sorry.
I hope you're doing all right. Thank you for sharing this information. I have, like Chairman Mullis, background in this as a local government official back 22 years ago. But, a lot of these authorities are created because our restrictions on the Constitution that prohibit local governments from borrowing money long term. So without this ability, I'm not sure where we would be today in regards to economic development, especially in rural Georgia. So these are very important tools that are given to local governments. And I'm not familiar with any problems where there's been a default in the bonds. Do you have a list of bonds that have been in default over the last 20 years? Are you familiar with a list of that? Because I haven't heard of any in Georgia.
I don't believe that we're aware of any. We do have a fairly regularly reissuance when as interest rates change. Several you'll see on the debt issuance just last year. Obviously, last year was a good year to refinance things.
Sure.
So we do have a lot of those to get more competitive rates, but I'm not aware of any.
But isn't it true that without these authorities, county governments would have to go to the taxpayers and put out a referendum and have a GO bond referendum to issue general obligation bonds? So that's their only real remedy to try to recruit any kind of industry. I mean, it would almost tie their hands behind their back if they did not have these authorities. But I was not aware of any communities that had been in default on their bonds, and I don't think you know of any either. Is that right? Okay, thank you.
That they would have to have a good bond rating in order to move forward.
Some communities don't have a bond rating at all. It depends on their history, but you can insure the bonds. You can get AAA rates if you pay for them, I think so.
And we will yield to subject matter experts on bond counsel or economic developers for discussion of deals. But I don't know that there's no reporting mechanism to your point.
Right.
They don't all have a bond rating, but most of it is as competitive as they can get it.
That's right.
Any other questions? Mr. Chairman or Representative Oliver, do y'all have any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can. Please continue.
I don't have the benefit of having your documents in front of me, but I want to, I'll get them and then I'll probably understand better, not have to ask this question. Do your documents tell me exactly how much bond indebtedness a particular development authority has incurred cumulatively?
Find that in the CAFR report.
Yes, that can be calculated. All debt issuances that are filed by a particular authority would need to be filed through a debt issuance report with our office.
Statutorily, it sounds like they're required to file that. Are you required to publish that in any way?
Yes, ma'am. We are required to publish an annual report of indebtedness, which is one of the files we've provided today.
And are local authorities required to publish that in any way other than with you? In other words, are they required to have a public website that demonstrates their financial assets and bond indebtedness?
I'm not aware of any other requirement. They would have certain audit requirements based on their structure if they are a political subdivision, I believe. But otherwise, they would be part of the local government as a blended or discrete component unit, where those financials would show up as well.
Just one final question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Do you have a dollar figure on the cumulative debt incurred by all of the development authorities?
I don't have that number here today. It's something we could look into, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Oliver. Chairman Oliver touched on a few things that I also had some interest in. I do think we'd like to understand the scope of the total indebtedness for development authorities and downtown development authorities. Certainly, the committee does not intend to move beyond those authorities that are not development in nature, but a regional development authority or a joint development authority or a downtown development authority. And I understand that there's a term payroll development authority. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I believe in one of your tables that was highlighted. for clarification for the committee, please differentiate a payroll development authority and a downtown or a general development authority or an industrial development authority.
So I'll call to your attention the first page of the annual reporting document.
Okay.
There's a little bit narrative description there, specifically about a sort of general definition. Obviously, the major difference between any combination of development, joint, industrial, payroll, and downtown is going to be the sort of the statutory limitation, the geographic limitations of the downtown sort of central business district typically. But for all intents and purposes, I'm not aware of any structural or vastly different operational difference between development authority, whether it be for a county or a city, if it is sort of jurisdictional wide, the payroll development authority, that just being another component of the economic development sort of verbiage. But otherwise, I think they would all basically be the same.
One note on the payroll development authorities, those are primarily older and created through constitutional amendment. So it's likely just a verbiage change through time.
Okay, so there are no new payroll development authorities being created. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
I believe the I have in this table were created in the 60s or 70s.
Right. So it's a terminology issue, not necessarily a substantive difference. Is that true?
It would, yes, sir. Though the ones created through constitutional amendment may have a little bit different structure or abilities because they're not under the development authority statute the way that more recently created ones are.
And those four are highlighted on the very back page of the subject authorities and reported creation date with citations. Those four all were created via constitutional amendment, and you have their date of creation there with it.
Senator Mullis has a question, sir.
All right, Senator Mullis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank y'all for being here today. Great information. Now, isn't it true that when a deal is done, that the financial obligations of the county or the authority has a public meeting to announce all that? The answer would be yes. Okay. Well, they all do. It's part of the Constitution. And I hope from this committee meeting that we keep Georgia as the #1 place to do business. And my fear is we're going to be doing some meddling that will take us off that status. So I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen. So thank you for being here.
We appreciate the chairman. His knowledge and expertise is welcome. And again, our objective is to support economic growth and development in our state. That's not our, our intent is to ensure that we remain the #1 state to do business. And I appreciate the input. Just trying to gain clarification. As development authorities are created, are they created in a similar manner, or is there a standard template, or as new authorities are created, are they all consistently created with the same parameters?
Currently, most of them are going to be created under general statute. So yeah, they would be subject to the development authorities law. Though I would defer to someone with more legal experience if they could still be created under local law. But yeah, generally looking for the table here, the over 450 development authorities created through general statute are governed by the same development authorities law.
So a statutory authority would have some commonality, but those created by local law, how would that differ?
Local law would create a single unique authority where that general act would outline their board members or their certain abilities, and they could differ individually.
Is there a standard template or a standard mechanism for doing that, or how does that work?
I would have to get back to you with more information on that. Their citation does show each individual local act. So citing those acts that we have here might provide information if they're all very similar or not, but I would need to do some more research and get back to you.
All right, thank you. We're relying on data that you provided, both the detail and the summary. Thank you. But we're relying on data from development authorities. How confident are you that that's complete and accurate?
We are tracking compliance rather than accuracy. So I can't speak individually for the accuracy of the reports. They are also participating in audits with their governing authority. But yeah, generally those larger authorities that have, maybe a full-time staff might submit more accurate information. But yeah, I can't speak to the total accuracy of it just because we don't have the capacity or
what about the completeness? How consistent do our development authorities adhere to the legislative requirement of reporting?
that varies as well. So in the immediately preceding fiscal year, completeness hovers around 50% or so, though because we require the 3 most recently completed fiscal years to be done in order to access any funds or to issue debt. As you get to previous years, FY20, FY19, compliance does rise significantly. And those authorities who... Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
So as an authority needs to perhaps issue debt, they then complete the reporting requirements. Is that a fair statement?
That does happen, yes.
Question for the committee?
Senator Parent has a question, and then Senator Gooch.
Thank you, Senator Rhett, Chairman Burns. Thanks for being with us today. This may be a very novice question, but I noticed on the debt issuances report that not all of the issued debt has a purpose listed. They all have an issue type, I think, but not all of them have a purpose listed. Can you explain why not all of them would have a purpose listed?
I'm sorry, Senator, is there one in particular you're looking
Well, for example, yeah, I mean, look, here's Brunswick and Glenn right on the first page.
I see, okay.
And then, on page 4, there's a bunch.
So it may just be because of the form has an option to provide more detail. I would have to look at those individually and see if maybe they didn't select one of the, this is a drop-down menu driven question here. So they may have left that blank and filled out a longer purpose elsewhere.
Are they required to list a purpose?
They're required to complete all fields. Yeah. So I would have to review why yeah, like I said, there's about 1,300 authorities. So it's possible that purpose is missing. And we would have to review that.
Looks like not exclusively, I think, but some of them, the majority of them seem to be for new issue versus refunding. But I guess that would make sense, maybe because there would be additional paperwork from the first issuance, maybe.
And
Okay,
yeah,
well, I would just be curious to know why that,
I can look into that for you. Yes, and it is possible because the longer form answer when they write a little more about the purpose, there may be something there and they didn't select something from the drop down. But I would have to individually verify those.
Thank you.
Senator Gooch.
Following up with the question about the audits and so forth, I believe every authority is required to do an audit. In fact, the counties are in charge of that to make sure they're submitted. Most counties are doing CAFRs now. It's a more comprehensive report. In fact, if you don't do your audit, I believe you lose your qualified local government status, which would disqualify you from loans, permits, grants, or anything from the state or any program through DCA. Is that not correct? So there is a carrot and a stick in state law that requires these authorities to comply with those audit requirements.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions for the committee? Okay, seeing none, Senator Rhett, I think that we're ready to move forward with our next topic of discussion. I want to thank Mr. Hood and Mr. Lilly and DCA for their willingness to share information and keep us abreast of the accuracy and the details of our development authorities. I would ask that we get us an aggregate number of the bond issues, preferably by year, for any development authority related entity. Certainly, we're going to stay out of water and sewer and hospitals and recreation and other types of authorities, but just strictly focusing on any development authority related. We do need a pretty good handle on the gross amount of debt incurred by our authorities. And again, certainly we've seen some recent activity, and that's good. That's a good thing. We just need to be aware of the total overall value of that investment by Georgia taxpayers. So without any additional questions from the committee, thank you, Mr. Hood. Thank you, Mr. Lilly. We appreciate you. Okay.
Thank y'all.
I want to move forward now and just touch on a couple of three other items as far as committee organization is concerned. I want to make sure that we are comfortable and clear about the objectives and responsibilities of the committee. I think all of you are aware that it stems from Senate Resolution 809. And again, I want to thank Chairman Mary Margaret Oliver for her efforts on the House side in this area, and certainly for her efforts in HB 923. Thank you, Madam Chairman. That was enacted into law, and it provides a bit of consistency about how certain authorities operate. It also provides for some compensation limitations where certain development authorities receive compensation, and it provides for oversight by the State Ethics Commission. So I think that's a step in the positive direction. But if we look at Senate Resolution 809, we're dealing with development authorities, both those that are statutory and locally created. Certainly, it is a critical tool. And I appreciate Senators Gooch and Mullis acknowledging it's a critical tool for the development and promotion of our trade, commerce, industry, and employment opportunities. And it is intended to be a public good and for the general welfare of the state. And that is indeed our mandate here. It does allow for certain benefits. The most notable is tax abatements. I think one of the things that you note on line 14 of that resolution, it alleges, or we allege in the legislation, it is billions of dollars worth of tax abatements. Well, I think we need to codify that. I think we need to make sure that we understand how much and where that might be happening. But at the end of the day, if you look at lines 31 through 33, the committee shall undertake a study of the conditions, needs, issues, and problems mentioned above and related thereto, and recommend any action or legislation which the committee deems necessary or appropriate. So that's basically our objective and our charge. Does any committee member have a comment or a question or a clarification? Hearing none, then we will move forward with this as our stated purpose and objective. Prior to this meeting, I've had a chance to communicate with a number of interested constituent groups. And I just want to make sure that the committee is aware of those groups and the fact that they are welcome to participate and provide input to the committee. Certainly, the Georgia Association of Economic Developers. Is Mr. Shea in the room, Kevin Shea?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. We appreciate Mr. Shea. We appreciate the Georgia Association of Economic Developers, and we look forward to working with them as we continue our efforts. Additionally, we have interest from the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, ACCG, either Todd Edwards or Kathleen Bowen. I think it's Kathleen. All right, yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Good to see you. And then GMA, Georgia Municipal Association, Tom Gale. Tom, are you in the neighborhood? I know that, again, thank you for being here and thank you for willingness to engage and participate. And then also the Georgia.
Tom's not here. He has a representative.
Thank you. That's good. As long as Tom's a representative of GMA, I think that's important. And then the Georgia School Board Association, Angela Palm is who I've been communicating with. Is she actively involved? I hope. Thank you. So anyway, the reason why I want to highlight those entities is those are the entities that that are impacted by decisions of our development authorities and our downtown development authorities. And so we want to make sure that in a partnership way, we effectively work together. Now, over the course of our study committee, we're going to take the opportunity to allow these entities and others to express their input into how they feel we could potentially improve the operations and reporting across our state. So that said, any comments or questions from the committee about these or other entities? There's at least, there are 2 or 3 others that I'm not going to necessarily call out this morning, but we've had conversations and they also would like to share some input with the committee. Is there any questions or comments from the committee?
Yes, sir. Senator Gooch.
Senator Gooch.
Reverend Burns, just for clarification, maybe not today, but in a future meeting, I'd like to dig into this idea of tax abatements, because I think that term is thrown around a lot, especially by the media. I don't believe we have tax abatements per se in Georgia. We use different vehicles for financing deals through our development authorities around the state, but I'm not sure we actually abate taxes. That's a term that gets used a lot. Maybe the attorneys explain that a little bit differently, but I believe our Constitution prohibits through the gratuities clause. So maybe we can talk about that to make sure we don't use that term inappropriately going through this process.
Point well taken. Thank you, Senator Gooch. It is a common term. And again, if you look at it from a statutory standpoint, property held by a development authority is not taxed. I don't believe. Is that correct? Excuse me. We have clarification on that?
You're correct. To my knowledge.
It's my general understanding, and again, it's been 20 years since I served on a county commission board. It has been longer than that since I've served on an industrial development authority, so I may be dated in my understanding. So I agree with you, Senator Gooch. I think it's important that we clearly understand the ramifications of our development authority decisions. Other questions or comments? Okay.
Senator Mullis says he doesn't want to date you. I don't know what he meant by date.
Listen, he was there long before I was born. Okay, what can I tell you?
But I just wanted to open up the floor to see if Mr. Shea, Kathleen, or the GMA representative or Angela wanted to say anything. You're welcome to come up to the mic if yeah, we'll have other meetings, yes.
Oh, yes.
But
I think we welcome their input this morning, but I think what we'll do is we set a schedule. We will blend their input into future meetings.
yes, sir. No questions.
Okay. All right. If you would, the last thing on the agenda is to discuss among the committee a proposed schedule for our activities between now and December 1st. Again, per resolution 809, we all turn into pumpkins about the 1st of December, I think. December 1st, 22. So all of our work needs to be completed so that we can submit a report prior to that date. And what I'd like to do is just discuss among committee potentially planning our work between now and probably the end of October. I'd like to try to finish the committee work in essence by the end of October, so that any recommendations from the committee, excuse me, anything that we would like to maybe codify, we'd have the opportunity to do that during the month of December. So as you look at your calendars, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a dry cough still. As you look at your calendars, perhaps we would have a meeting in August, and one or more in September, and one or more in October. There is a unique opportunity, and I offer this to the committee. I've discussed this with Mr. Shea. The Georgia Association of Economic Developers are meeting in Savannah in September. I believe those dates are the 14th through the 16th of September. If it is the committee's wish, we could hold one meeting away from Metro Atlanta area and do that on the afternoon of the 13th of September. I'd like to just throw that out and say, do you feel that that would be a beneficial use of the committee's time? No one wants to come to Savannah, man. It's an hour from where I am.
Senator Mullis said yes.
I make a motion and we agree with that. I mean, what do you want me to do?
I don't know. I just want to know if it's an objection. I think that's the key. If we do one meeting of the committee at the end of August, and perhaps hear from certainly Georgia Association of Economic Developers, let Mr. Shea and perhaps some of the officers there share some info with the committee, and perhaps one other key constituent group, do that in August, then give our good friends at Georgia Association of Economic Developers, their members, a chance to provide input to the committee in September, perhaps on the afternoon of the 13th. And then plan another meeting in Atlanta late September, early October, and then perhaps one other final meeting. Does that sound reasonable to the committee? Senator Barrett.
Thank you, Senator Chairman Burns. Do you envision that there would be the ability to participate via Zoom in Savannah?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I may not be able to.
I understand. And we will do our very best. We'll find a way to make Zoom work for all of our committee meetings. I want to thank Andrew Allison and staff with Senate Press for facilitating these activities. I'm sure that if we choose to go outside of Atlanta, we will ensure that Zoom is an option. Okay. Okay. If there's no objection, the committee feels comfortable with that as a rough plan, what I will do is ask Ms. Thomas, my administrative assistant, to begin recommending tentative dates for mid-late August. Go ahead and pencil in the 13th of September, and then we will again look for a date late September, early October. And as we complete the committee's work, we'll understand more about how much additional information we may need. I think it's interesting that right now it does not appear, other than through DCA, that there's a large amount of information available. And if information is available outside of DCA or through some other entity, it would be very helpful for us to become knowledgeable about that. So Those of you who are participating, if you can help share additional input options, I'll be happy to make that happen and provide that as additional resources to the committee. Any other questions or comments? Well, it's 11:20. I want to thank Senator Rett for convening the meeting. I want to apologize again for not being able to physically join you. I want to thank the committee members for being there. Every committee member is there except yours truly, and I regret that. I want to also thank Chairman Oliver for joining us and adding her knowledge and expertise as we go down this road together. If there is no other business to come before the committee today, Senator Rett, I'd ask that you adjourn the committee.
Before we adjourn, I'd just like to take a moment to reflect on the passing of Miss Kathleen this week.
Please do.
Just a moment of silence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
And we hope you feel better, and we will call the meeting adjourned if that's all right with you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you much. I appreciate everyone's input.